Imagine with me for a moment. Life is made of choices. Every single day, without exception, you and I make small and big decisions that shape the course of our future. We decide what to say, what to keep silent, where to go, what to avoid, who to connect with, and even what to feed inside our hearts. Each choice, no matter how small, carries weight. Perhaps we don't notice it at the time, but sooner or later, the fruit of those choices finds us. And this is exactly what John chapter 8, verses 1 to 11 tells us. It is the story of an unexpected, dramatic, and deeply revealing encounter. The encounter between Jesus and a woman caught in adultery. An encounter of shame, judgment, but also of grace, mercy, and transformation. Now let me ask you, what if this woman were you? What if your life, with all your secrets, mistakes, and hidden failures, were exposed before everyone? How would you react if your worst sin were brought to light in public, before family, neighbors, friends, and even before God? This biblical text is not just a historical record. It is a mirror of the human soul. It speaks of me and it speaks of you. It shows us how our choices place us at crossroads that can lead either to life or to destruction. The narrative begins by highlighting two central characters, Jesus and the adulterous woman. But before being biblical characters, they are symbols of our own possibilities of choice. That night, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, a place of prayer, of seeking, of intimacy with the Father. He chose to spend the night in communion with God. At dawn, he came down to the temple and sat to teach. Soon, a crowd gathered to hear his words. Jesus became the center of attention for the right reasons. He was honored, respected, desired. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the city, a woman made a completely different choice. She decided to give herself to a forbidden relationship, an adultery. Perhaps it wasn't the first time. Maybe she had already tasted the feeling of, no one will ever find out. Perhaps she believed the lie that she could sin without consequences. But the morning comes. And the morning always comes. And when the sun rises, every decision reveals its consequence. Let me ask you, how was your night? Have you chosen the mountain of prayer, or the dark alleys of hidden sin? If your life were exposed the next morning, would you be found in the temple, teaching and edifying, or would you be dragged in shame, accused and humiliated? This is not just the story of Jesus and a woman. It is our story. It is proof that every path we walk at night creates an inevitable destiny in the morning. The Bible shows us that life is governed by a spiritual law, the law of sowing and reaping. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap, Galatians 6 verse 7. Jesus sowed prayer and reaped authority and honor. The woman sowed sin and reaped shame and condemnation. Maybe you think, but I've sinned so many times and I've never been exposed. Will this really come back against me someday? The answer is yes. Sooner or later, the harvest comes. It may come in the form of natural consequences, in the form of inner pain, in the form of broken trust, of lost relationships, of lack of peace. It's like a credit card. You can use it however you want, spend freely, but the bill always comes. And here I want to ask you, what have you been sowing? Have you been cultivating purity, prayer, holiness, communion with God? Or have you been sowing hidden choices, which one day may bring shame not only to you but to your family, your reputation, your future? Back to the scene. Suddenly, in the middle of Jesus' teaching, the crowd is interrupted. Scribes and Pharisees drag the woman into the center of the temple. She had been caught in the very act of adultery. There was no way to deny it. Imagine the scene, a half-dressed woman, ashamed, exposed before everyone. The look of contempt from society. The accusing finger of the religious. The murmur of the crowd. She was no longer a person, but a public spectacle of humiliation. And here is something profound. The accusers were not simply interested in upholding the law. They wanted to use the pain of a woman to try to trap Jesus. It was a double-edged snare. If he absolved her, he would be going against the law of Moses. If he condemned her, he would betray his own ministry of love and mercy. How many times have we also used someone else's failure to make ourselves look better? How many times have we pointed the finger to expose, humiliate, and criticize, only to hide our own flaws? How many times have we secretly rejoiced when someone else fell because it took the focus off of us? The human heart without God is hypocritical. The Pharisees wanted to destroy Jesus and the woman at the same time. They didn't see people, they saw opportunities for accusation. And you? Could it be that you too have been living by pointing out the sins of others, while ignoring your own heart? Now look again at the woman. There she is, trapped. No way out. No defense. Her sin was exposed. Everyone knew. The sentence was clear: death by stoning. Think with me, how many times have we also felt this way? Trapped by our own choices. Enslaved by habits we know displease God, but that seem to have power over us. How many times has guilt left us naked, exposed, with no excuse before the Lord? This woman is the portrait of all of us. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3 verse 23. And without Christ's intervention, all of us would be condemned. See the contrast. On the same morning, two very different scenes unfold in Jerusalem. Jesus, in the temple, honored, the center of positive attention, reaping the fruit of a life of communion with God. The woman, in the same temple, ashamed, the center of negative attention, reaping the fruit of wrong choices. It is as if the text were shouting at us, your choices today will determine your tomorrow. And you, where do you want to be tomorrow? Do you want to be in the center of attention because of grace, wisdom, and a faith that inspires hope? Or do you want to be in the center of attention because of exposed sin, shame, and pain? The scribes and Pharisees were not interested in justice. They were not concerned with the holiness of God, nor with the life of that woman. Their hearts were consumed with another feeling: hatred toward Jesus. They wanted to use her as bait. If Jesus said she should not be stoned, he would be accused of breaking the law of Moses. But if he said she should die, he would contradict his own message of love, compassion, and forgiveness. Do you see it? The woman, with all her pain, was nothing more than a tool in the hands of those men. She was just a piece in a larger game, to try to destroy Jesus. And here comes a hard question for us. How many times have we also used someone else's pain to serve our own interests? Maybe we don't drag someone publicly into the center of a crowd, but how many times have we used another person's mistake to gossip, to feel superior, to comfort ourselves by saying, "At least I didn't do that"? The Pharisees used her shame to attack Jesus. And us? Do we not do the same when we expose, criticize, or humiliate someone, just to satisfy our wounded egos? Notice how cruel the scene is. They put the woman in the middle of the circle, in the middle of the crowd, in the middle of the temple. Accusing her was not enough. They wanted to expose her. They wanted to turn her pain into a public show. And how many times do we, as humans, do exactly the same? How often do we become experts in exposing the mistakes of others? In the age of social media, how many people live by pointing fingers, destroying reputations, turning failures into entertainment? Hypocrisy feeds on this. When we look at someone else's sin, we feel a certain relief. It's as if we're saying to ourselves, I'm a sinner too, but see, I'm not that bad. There are people worse than me. But is that how God sees it? In His eyes, does such comparison exist? Does the fact that I didn't commit the same sin give me the right to condemn another? No. Before God, we all need the same grace. We are all on the same level of need. Every time someone else's sin becomes clearer to your eyes than your own, beware. You are closer to Satan than to Jesus. Because that is exactly what the devil does. He accuses. He is the accuser of the brethren. But Jesus? Jesus is the advocate. He doesn't ignore sin, but He also doesn't expose it to humiliate. He brings it to light to restore. So let me ask you, how many times have you seen someone else's failures more clearly than your own? How many times have you been quick to judge but slow to examine yourself? Could it be that you have fallen into the same trap of hypocrisy just like the Pharisees? Another detail stands out. Where was the man? By definition, adultery involves two people. The woman was there exposed. But the man? He disappeared. He was not brought to the temple. He was not accused. He was not exposed. This reveals the injustice of that society, but it also reveals something about us. We tend to choose which sins to condemn and which sins to ignore. How many times do we choose to harshly condemn those who sin differently from us, but are lenient with our own failures? How many times do we create a scale of sins, where mine are acceptable but the sins of others are unforgivable? That selectivity is hypocrisy. And Jesus confronts it head-on. The Pharisees knew the law. They were religious scholars, spiritual leaders. But they had no love. And religion without love is nothing but judgment. It is weight. It is a stone in the hand. The law of Moses did say that sin should be punished. But the Pharisees forgot that the same law also revealed the mercy of God. They picked only the convenient part, the one that justified their accusation, and ignored the essence of God's heart. Here lies a painful lesson. Knowledge without mercy is a deadly weapon. Maybe you read the Bible from cover to cover. Maybe you can recite verses, interpret texts, debate doctrine. But if your heart is not filled with love, compassion, and mercy, all of that becomes just a stone. And you? Have you been using the Bible as a sword to wound, or as balm to heal? Has your religion been a burden on others, or grace that lifts burdens away? The scene is set. Jesus is seated in the temple, teaching. A silent crowd drinks in every word. Suddenly the atmosphere shifts. A group of scribes and Pharisees storms in, interrupting everything. In their midst, pushed and dragged without defense, is the woman. She is thrown into the center like an object, not a person. Her mistake is exposed, her dignity stripped. The temple, a place of worship, is now turned into a cruel stage. And the religious men, with stones already in their hands, declare before all, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" John 8 verses 4 to 5. It was a question laced with poison. This was not only about a woman, not only about sin. This was in fact a trap. How will Jesus answer? Will he follow the law of Moses and allow her to be stoned? Or will he stand against the religious leaders, risking being accused of rebellion? It was a humanly impossible dilemma. Yet Jesus does not answer immediately. Instead, he does something surprising. He bends down and begins writing on the ground with his finger, John 8 verse 6. Why does Jesus bend down? Why does he write on the ground? The text does not tell us what he wrote. But what it does reveal is far more powerful. The silence of Jesus speaks louder than the words of men. While the accusers shout, he remains silent. While they point fingers, he stoops down. While the crowd expects blood, he writes in the dust. Have you ever noticed how silence can be more eloquent than 1,000 speeches? Sometimes God's silence in our crises feels incomprehensible. But, just as in that scene, the silence of the Lord is not the absence of an answer. It is the preparation for a response greater than we imagined. Jesus writes in the dust. And this is highly symbolic. The Bible says we were formed from the dust of the earth. By writing on the ground, Jesus seems to remind us of our condition. Fragile, limited, full of flaws. Perhaps he wrote the hidden sins of the accusers. Perhaps he wrote verses of the law they themselves had broken. Perhaps he just scribbled as if showing that he cared little for their stage spectacle. We do not know. But we know the effect. Jesus took the focus off the woman and placed it on himself. Suddenly she was no longer the shameful center. The master was. And here lies a deep lesson. Jesus always takes our place at the center of shame. What should have been your exposure, he turns into focus on himself. He shifts people's eyes from your guilt to his grace. But the religious men were not satisfied. The text says they kept pressing him with questions, John 8 verse 7. They demanded an answer. Accusation never rests. The pointing finger never lowers by itself. There will always be someone ready to throw the first stone. Then Jesus straightened up and said the words that changed history. Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. John 8 verse 7. With one sentence, Jesus turned the game around. He did not ignore the law of Moses. He did not relativize sin. But neither did he bow to their hypocrisy. He placed everyone on the same level. Do you want to judge? Then start by judging yourself. Do you want to throw stones? Then let the one without sin go first." What a deafening silence must have filled the temple at that moment. Stones heavy in their hands now weighed like lead. Their furious eyes turned inward. And the question still echoes today, who among us is without sin? The text continues, "After hearing Jesus' words, the accusers began to go away one by one, starting with the older ones." John 8 verse 9. What an extraordinary scene. The stones dropping to the ground, one after another. The dry sound echoing in the temple. Each stone that fell was an admitted sin, a revealed hypocrisy, a heart humbled. And why did the older ones leave first? Perhaps because they were more aware of their own sins. Perhaps because they had lived long enough to know that no one is righteous before God. The fact is, in just moments, the temple once full of accusers was empty. Only Jesus and the woman remained. The stones were no longer in the hands of the accusers. One by one they had fallen to the ground. Their dry sound testified that no one, absolutely no one, was in a position to condemn. The accusers slipped away in silence, ashamed, starting with the oldest. The crowd dispersed. The disciples stood aside. The religious leaders had nothing left to say. And suddenly, the temple that moments earlier had been filled with voices, fingers pointing, threats, and judgment, was now empty. Empty of men. Empty of accusation. But full of the presence of Jesus. And there she was, the woman, alone before him. Up until that moment, the woman had only heard shouts. She had only felt the push of rough hands, the contemptuous looks, the words that pierced like daggers. But now before her stood Jesus, the only one who had the right to judge her, the only one truly without sin, the only one who could legitimately cast the first stone. But what does he do? He rises, looks her in the eyes, and asks tenderly, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" John 8 verse 10. What an extraordinary question. It was as if he were saying, "Look around you. Where are the accusers? Where are the ones who pushed you, shouted at you, threatened your life? Where are those who wanted to destroy you?" And the woman, still trembling, short of breath, whispers back, "No one, Lord." John 8 verse 11. Then Jesus declares the most liberating words she had ever heard in her life. "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." John 8 verse 11. Pause for a moment and let these words echo in your heart. The only one who had the right to condemn chose to forgive. The only one who could judge chose to absolve. The only righteous before the unrighteous chose to give a second chance. And here is the very heart of the gospel. Mercy instead of condemnation. But pay attention, Jesus does not say, "It's okay." He does not sweep sin under the rug. He does not relativize it. He does not say, "Keep going, after all, no one is perfect." He says, "Go and sin no more." The grace of Jesus is not permission to remain in sin. The grace of Jesus is power to abandon sin. Mercy does not cancel truth, it enables us to live in the truth. And here I ask you, how many times have you used grace as an excuse to sin? How many times have you thought, "God forgives anyway, so I can go on"? Could it be that we are confusing forgiveness with permission? Jesus does not save us to keep us in the mud. He saves us to pull us out. That woman went from the edge of death to the edge of life. In a single moment, the weight of condemnation was lifted off her shoulders. The stones that should have killed her lay on the ground. And in place of death, she received a new chance to live. That is what happens when we meet Jesus. The weight of guilt falls. The sentence of condemnation is canceled. What remains is possibility, new paths, new life, new beginnings. Maybe you carry old guilt, painful memories, mistakes that still haunt you. Maybe you live as though the stones are still raised against you. But today Jesus stands before you saying, "Neither do I condemn you." The great message of this passage is that every choice brings consequences. That same night, Jesus chose the Mount of Olives and reaped authority. The woman chose adultery and reaped shame. And you? What have your choices been? Where have you spent your nights? What seeds have you been sowing in the soil of your life? Because morning always comes. And when it comes, you will be harvesting what you planted. When the sun rises, will you be found in the temple like Jesus, a source of blessing and hope? Or will you be found in shame like the woman, exposed by wrong choices? It has been said, it is always time to change your path, before it is too late. Perhaps you are alive today only because of God's mercy. Perhaps He has already given you signs, warnings, and opportunities to change. But how long will you insist on living the same way? Will you wait until shame knocks at the door of your house? Will you wait until collapse, loss, or destruction come only then to remember God? Will you wait for the bill to arrive before realizing it was time to change? Today is the day to correct your path. Today is the day to leave the road of condemnation and step into the way of life. This story also reminds us of something essential. No one is without sin. We all have failures. We all have secrets. We all carry guilt. And if anyone thinks they can throw the first stone, beware. Because before God not one is righteous. All have sinned. All fall short of His glory. The difference is not between those who sin and those who don't. The difference is between those who have met Jesus and let their stones fall to the ground. In that temple, Jesus stood between the woman and the stones. He protected her. He absolved her. And on the cross He did the same for us. The stones that should have struck us fell upon Him. The condemnation that belonged to us was placed on Him. The judgment we deserved was carried on His shoulders. And now, everyone who believes can hear the same voice. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Remember, grace is not just forgiveness, it is power. It does not only erase the past, it builds a different future. It does not only remove guilt, it gives strength not to return to the same mistake. Maybe you think, but I'm weak, I can't change. And Jesus replies, alone you can't. But with me you can do all things. New life is not the result of your willpower. It is the result of Christ living in you. He is the one who transforms. He is the one who sustains. He is the one who gives victory over sin. Perhaps today you feel like that woman. Accused, ashamed, trapped. But Jesus stands before you not to condemn you but to lift you up. He is saying, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. This is your chance to begin again. This is the moment to change your course. This is the day to say, Lord, I don't want to live the same way anymore. I want a new life with you. Now let me ask you, what stones are still raised against you? What guilt still weighs on your heart? What wrong choices still bring shame to your soul? And more. How many stones have you been carrying to throw at others? How many times have you been more of an accuser than a vessel of mercy? Jesus is saying, let the stones fall. Release accusation. Release guilt. Release hypocrisy. Because with Him, condemnation no longer has the last word. What remains is life, new, abundant, and eternal.